Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mono from Mono CFC, and these are 5 things that Mauricio Pochettino can do to improve Chelsea's form. Number 1. Go back to basics. There have been tons of questions surrounding this new hybrid formation that Pochettino has been utilising in recent weeks, with the injuries to Carney Chukwuemeka and more importantly Christopher Nkunku seemingly forcing him to change his original plans. And whilst rotation is certainly necessary, it seems this drastic swap in style is a step too far. Despite good performances and many chances created, Chelsea are lacking that clinical cutting edge that we had in pre-season, and after a few games using this new style, it's clear to most that Pochettino needs to go back to the drawing board and go back to basics. I think with some of our players more settled in now, we should start to see less experimental lineups with players out of position and start seeing a definitive starting 11 next weekend against Bournemouth. With Noni Madueke and Mykhailo Mudryk now seemingly back up to speed, as well as the recent addition of Cole Palmer, I see no reason why Chilwell should be playing in one of the winger roles, and should be placed firmly back into his natural position at left back. We have a few combination of winger setups we can do now, Mudryk on the left with Sterling, Madueke or Palmer on the right, or Sterling on the left with Palmer or Madueke on the right. All are viable options. And that's excluding a player that I will talk about in the next section, who can also play across the attacking midfield 3. I believe one of those winger partnerships with Jackson up top, Chilwell back at left back and Colwill back in centre back will be more natural for all of the players and should see our fortunes turn around with the forward players all being forwards and able to score the chances that we have been missing recently. Number 2. Trust Ian Maatsen. One of the weirdest things that Poch has been doing since pre-season is seemingly forgetting that young Dutch talent Ian Maatsen exists. Maatsen was arguably the best Chelsea player in pre-season, playing all across the front line but never seeming out of place. He scored 2 goals and got 1 assist through the campaign, played the 4th most amount of minutes, and looked like a genuine superstar despite playing in a quote unnatural position. Since pre-season, he has only featured for the Blues 3 times in the Premier League, with a pitiful 26 minutes of play throughout those 3 games. He also featured for a full 90 minutes in the League Cup against Wimbledon, and lo and behold, he was one of the highest rated players on the pitch, despite not getting a goal contribution and getting yellow carded, which usually lowers a player's rating in comparison to others. What's even more confusing is that Poch hasn't even considered Maatsen for this left wing back / left wing role that Chilwell is currently playing in, as that pseudo position seems absolutely tailor made for a player like Ian, who is a left back who is far more suited to playing in the offensive line, as he'd been doing that all pre-season. Overall, it is just a bizarre decision, and I'd imagine that this exclusion was down to him possibly leaving in the summer transfer window, so let's hope that now he's definitely here permanently, especially if he signs the rumoured new contract he's been offered, he'll start getting some more minutes, and not just as a substitute. Real quick, if you're enjoying the content and want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Cheers. Number 3. Fix his substitutions. Speaking of substitute appearances, another thing we've been unfortunately seeing from Pochettino is a reluctance to fully utilise his substitutes bench. You are now allowed to make 5 substitutions in each and every game, and with our squad being slightly larger than average with 29 players in total, you'd think that Poch would be one of the first managers to be making all of those substitutions, but that hasn't been the case. In fact, it's been the complete opposite. Like we spoke about with Maatsen a moment ago, he's been giving our rotational players short, uneventful cameos off of the bench, which doesn't help anyone. It doesn't give those bench players enough time to change games, it doesn't give them enough time to settle in and get used to playing with this team, and it's almost as if Poch doesn't trust any of the players except the ones on the pitch from the start. Not only that, but his substitutions have just been extremely puzzling. Leaving on 3 centre-backs when we are searching for a goal is quite frankly idiotic in my personal opinion, especially when we have young, hungry talent on the bench that can impact games. Instead of shaking things up and keeping the opposition guessing, he makes our team play as they were and hoping that something happens. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting things to change is lunacy, and in the next few games, especially with some of our injured players such as Broja and Benoit Badiashile looking very close to returns, I hope and I'd expect this short-sighted reliance of first team players to end. Number 4. Use Leslie more. Like I spoke about with Ian Martson, another player that is confusingly being left out is our new 19-year-old French defensive midfielder Leslie Ugachukwu. The French-born Nigerian has been good any time he stepped onto the pitch for us, and unfortunately that just hasn't been often enough. He also played the full 90 in that League Cup game, but other than that he's been completely shoved to the side, only getting a total of 8 minutes in 2 Premier League games so far. Instead, Poch has opted to play Caicedo in the 6, which is not his natural position, and we've seen how this has made Caicedo play worse in recent times too. Leslie is a very rare breed of player that can sit in the 6 and allow the other midfielders to push up higher and create for the team, and in a team that is lacking goals, this is exactly the type of player we could be utilising to help us score more. We've brought in Romeo Lavia, who was supposed to be doing this job, but he's not up to full fitness yet, and thus we've had to utilise other players. But why has this not been his most natural replacement, Ugachukwu? Leslie is literally only a couple of months younger than the Belgian ex-Saint, and with his size is a profile of player that we have been missing in midfield ever since we lost Nemanja Matic all those years ago. I'd love to see him get a run of games as a lone 6 or in the defensive pivot, as this would allow our other players to impact the game more. Enzo could push up higher in the 8 in order to create more chances, Gallagher could start playing more like a 10/8 hybrid like he did at Crystal Palace and get into the box and score goals, rather than being a ball-winning midfielder. Even Caicedo could then push up into his favoured box-to-box role, depending on which midfield trio we'd like to use. It may be a lot to ask for such a young player, but we were going to do this exact thing with Lavia anyway, and from the short cameos we've gotten from Leslie, he looks perfectly capable, if Poch is willing to put his trust into him. Before we get on to the final thing, it's time for the question of the day. As always, I'm going to highlight some of the comments from the last video, so here are a few responses to the last question of the day. Thanks guys for your continued support as ever. If you want your comment to be featured in the next video, leave your answer to this video's question of the day down below with QOTD at the start. So for this week's question of the day, we'll go for this. What is your prediction for how the rest of the season will go for Chelsea, and why? And finally, number 5. Don't change too much. Despite all I have said, I don't want Pochettino to drastically change his ideas and abandon his philosophies. Despite our goal-scoring woes, we have actually been playing some really good football, which I think has gone under the radar due to the results being poor as of late. We've created the most big chances in the entire league, the most crosses in the league, the second most passes, the third most through balls, we've got the highest average possession of any team in the league, and the highest amount of touches. We are absolutely bossing games more than any other team. We just need to put that final finishing touch, quite literally, on, and we'll be winning games for fun. I think we are still in a teething process at the moment, and as the season progresses we will improve as the players get more comfortable with each other and their styles of play, get used to the manager's system and what he's expecting of them, and get confidence in themselves, which can only be achieved through substantial minutes and repetition. A lot of people in my comments have been suggesting that we are, quote, seeing the same things as last year, and are already sounding the crisis alarms 4 games in, which I personally feel is ridiculous. I liked Graham Potter, but let's be totally honest, if he had this group of players, we'd have scored a grand total of 0 goals, would be without a single win, and would be out of the League Cup. This is nowhere near the same situation as last time, and you can tell that from the players' attitudes/reactions to losses. They seem more together, and this is all down to Pochettino, which is why I don't want him to suddenly flip the script and stop doing what he has been doing. Subtle changes like the ones I mentioned earlier are good enough, the results will come. Stay patient, masses, because we have been through this exact situation before. We finished the season extremely poorly under Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte came in and started poorly, everyone said here we go again, and then we slightly changed the system and went on to break multiple records and win the Premier League that year. It's far too early to judge Poch in my opinion, and as a fan base we just need to get behind the team and wait for the fruits of Poch's labour. But those are just a few things that I think Pochettino can do to improve Chelsea's form, and that was my list. Let me know what you think we need to improve upon down in the comments section below, and if you'd be so kind, subscribe to the channel and leave the video a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss a video from me, or check out some of the other videos on the channel on screen right now. I've been Mono from MonoCFC, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.